Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Great to see you here again. Now, I've got something pretty exciting happening tonight. I'm out here, as you can see, at an old favourite location of mine. Now, I've shot here quite a few times in the past few years, and I like coming back to these places. But tonight, I'm going to do a lens test. Now, I don't do this very often, but I've got two lenses here, and they've been very kindly offered to me to test out. Firstly, I've got a Viltrox 24mm f1.8 Nikon Z mount. So thank you to Viltrox for sending that to me. And they contacted me. I get a lot of people contact me about testing products. And I can tell you now that most of them I'm not even interested in, because most of the products, well, I don't use them, and I'm not, this is not a channel that's all about gear and testing products and all that sort of stuff. But occasionally something comes along that I think, yeah, I could use that. Now, I don't actually have a 24mm lens in my arsenal. It's not a focal length I use very often, to be absolutely honest. But for that reason, I guess it was something that, yeah, I could probably use that. And of course, the other lens here is a Nikon 24mm f1.8 Z. So that's the Z mount Nikon Genuine. Now, that's on loan from Nikon Australia. So thank you very much to Nikon Australia for sending me this lens. I'm going to test these two lenses together because, after all, they are an exact, I guess, one replaces the other or whatever. Now, the Viltrox lens is probably about half the price, a little bit over half the price of the Nikon lens. So if it's anywhere near as good as the Nikon lens, that'll be quite good value for money. I've seen a few people use this lens for nightscapes. I want to do a bit of a test, and I'll tell you something else. There's a bit of a bonus here tonight because there's an Aurora happening. I didn't know it was going to happen, I think there's something going on right now. So I'm going to do a bit of testing side by side. So what I've done, I've set these cameras up both on their own separate tripods, both remote control. I'm going to use the same exact settings for every shot that I do. I'm going to put them right beside each other, so I'll have an exact replica of each image. All right, let's get going. So here we have the two lenses side by side. This is the Viltrox 24mm f1.8 for Nikon Z mount, and this is the Nikon 24mm f1.8. You'll notice that this one's got a lens hood, comes with it. It's a brand new lens. This lens didn't come with one. It looks like it's been kicked around like a football. It's got scratches and marks all over it. It's a loan copy, that's fair enough. Still works really well. I've done a bit of testing with it, sharp as anything. This one is a slightly less weight and slightly smaller in actual physical size than the Nikon equivalent. But they're not that much different to look at. One of the things I do like about this Viltrox lens is that it has a separate aperture ring. You can see it there, so it's got a manual aperture ring. And that's something that you don't see too much on modern lenses. So some of these third-party manufacturers are coming to the party with some of that stuff, which is quite handy when you're shooting video. A lot of people like to use that because with the other lenses, such as this one, you've got to adjust the aperture like you would at the front there, which is not that much of a problem anyway. To be honest, I hardly ever do any of that sort of thing when I'm shooting video anyway. Apart from that, they're very similar looking lenses, pretty much the same size, and it's all about performance though, isn't it? I have actually tested this 24mm Nikon lens in a past video a couple of years ago. That was before I got the 20mm lens, because the 20mm lens is the one I really wanted, and of course that's my favourite lens of all. If either of these lenses are anywhere near as good as that, I'd be absolutely ecstatic. But anyway, let's get testing and see what we come up with. Okie dokie, so here we are. I've got the two cameras set on tripods at exactly the same height, facing exactly the same subject in the background. I've also got them hooked up to remote triggers. So I've got a Yongnuo RF603 on each one. I've got my remote control in my pocket. Also got my torch here, ready to go to do a little bit of light painting. Not much, because what I've actually done is I've set up low level lights. I've got two. I've got one at the back there and one over to this side, and pretty much that's going to be the lighting. I want to keep it as consistent as possible. Now, because these two tripods and cameras are here in exactly the same spot, they're going to be triggered exactly the same time. In theory, if it all works out, they'll be exactly the same photograph. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I reckon, a little bit more trouble focusing the Viltrox lens than the Nikon lens. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Nikon Z series, when you turn them on, they focus to infinity straight away, and both of these lenses did that. But maybe it's because it's not quite as sharp. I don't know. I won't know until I get them back home on the computer, but it just doesn't look as sharp when I'm focusing. So the proof will be in the pudding. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to shoot at various apertures. So I'm going to shoot at f1.8, f2.2 and f2.8, and these are all going to be single exposures. There's no stacking, there's no nothing. If I'm lucky, I'm going to catch a bit of that Aurora that's happening over there. Anyway, let's get into it and we'll see how we go. I'm also changing ISOs and shutter speeds to go with those apertures. So let's see what we can get. All right, here we go. First up, oh, have a look at that. There's some Aurora. Look at this. So let's just zoom in a bit and see what we can find. So what we've got the Viltrox over here on the right hand side, and we've got the Nikon on the left hand side. Oh gee, this is at 1.8. They don't look too bad. Don't look too bad at all. But see, I think the Nikon's sharper, but it's a bit hard to tell. Oh, look at that colour. Woohoo! There's Aurora. How about that, eh? I'm not even out here to capture that, but there it is. All right, so that was shot at f1.8 at 8-second shutter speeds, ISO 3200, white balance 4500 Kelvin. They both look exactly the same. Then I shot the same thing at f2.2, 10-second shutter speeds at ISO 3200. Oh, come on. And they look the same as well. Then I shot f2.8. So I did a couple. Yeah, there we go. f2.8. So these two are, well, gee, that's nice too. Yeah, very nice. Look at that, the Aurora over here. Gee, it looks good. And if you zoom in, you can see the stars. I can't tell. I really can't tell which is better. They're different, just slightly, but gee, they both look pretty good. I'm not complaining just yet, but I'll wait and see what it looks like on a bigger screen. So I'm going to go over and take a little bit different composition now and see what I can come up with. Oh, well, you wouldn't read about it. Now, I've been doing a few shots, which is fine. The clouds have come across. Doesn't that always happen? You know, the forecast for tonight was for clear for hours. I'll tell you what, I might still be here at dawn the way things are going. I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens. Well, I think it goes without saying that any decent test of any sort of equipment on this channel has to be accompanied by supper. We're out here in the middle of nowhere. Oh, it's well after midnight, but I've got my cup of tea with me. So let's give that a pour, see what we can find. Oh, nice and warm. It's actually pretty cold out here, but I'm not complaining. I mean, I whinged a fair bit in the last video because it was so hot, and I'm actually enjoying just a little bit of relief from the hot weather. It's still summer here in Australia, so there's more heat coming. Oh, but tell you what, now you heard it first on this channel. It's been almost 12 months since I've had one of these little beauties on the channel. Rumble, have a look at that. I picked it up today from the bakery, knowing I'd be out here tonight, all alone, out here in the middle of nowhere, needing a bit of refreshment. So here we go, Rumble it is. Woohoo! Fantastic. I'll tell you what, where else would you want to be? Oh man, that was just so good. Oh, it's good to have a rumble back on the channel. Anyway, look, I got to get moving because otherwise I'm going to be still here at dawn. And I really want to get some sleep tonight. Now, before I do that though, this video is going to be basically split into two halves. The first half is out here in the field taking the shots. I'm going to run you through the settings, etc. The second part, we're going to be looking at some of these images on the computer at home in the studio, and then we'll do a bit of a wrap up and just the final words on the lenses. So let's get going. Well, persistence has paid off. I waited and waited and waited just to see if the sky would clear for me to get some shots, and it did clear. So it's blowing the clouds across, but anyway, look what I did. I shot 10 images of just the sky with no lighting in the foreground. My intention, of course, is so that I can stack for noise reduction if I want to do that. Other than that, I can just look at the single shots. So I shot those at f2.8, 10-second shutter speeds at ISO 6400. And they looked okay on the back of the camera. Then I stopped down to f5.6 and ISO 500 and did some 10-second shutter speeds again, did some light painting around. I did my fine art light painting because I thought, well, I'm here, I may as well do that and just see how they come up. And yeah, on the back of the camera, both cameras, they look fine. So that's good. Now my next intention is to get the tracker out and just see if I can shoot. Nothing exotic. I just want to see what the edge sharpness is and things like that when it's on a tracker. But look, if the clouds don't clear, it's a waste of time getting the tracker out. So we'll see how we go. Yeah, I'll just hang around a bit, but it's getting very, very late and I'm tired. Gee, I might even have to have another cuppa. But anyway, we'll see how we go. All right, so I've got the tracker out. I'm still being a little bit frustrated by clouds. They're coming and going. But generally speaking, I reckon I'll get something here. So I'm just going to do single shots. I'll shoot wide open at f1.8 and then I'll probably for about 90 seconds. And then I'll stop it down to f2.8 and go for 2 minutes, ISO 800. I'll compare the two cameras and just see. I'm pointing up towards the Itacarina Southern Cross area. So that's not far off the South Celestial Pole. So I get that. It's not going to be moving too much, but it's a bit windy here as well, which I'm not too happy about. So yeah, anyway, we'll see how we go. I just got to work my way around these clouds and we'll go from there. And so our testing out here under the stars comes to a close. It's very late. I don't even want to look at my watch. So I've got these two lenses. Now, by the way, these are both Nikon Z6 Mark II bodies. They're exactly the same camera, and the lenses, well, they seem to perform pretty well, I thought, but I won't know until I put them on the computer. So that's the second half of this video. We're going to go home now. Well, I'm going to have a rest, but in a moment you're going to see some final images. We'll run through some of the close-ups on the screen, etc., and we'll continue on. So I'll see you in a jiffy. Okay, so here we are back the next day. I've had a bit of rest. Well, not as much as I'd like, but anyway, I've had some. And I've had a chance to have a bit of a squiz at these lenses again here. Got some images up on the screen. I'm going to show you those in a minute. So after last night's shooting out there, my initial reaction is there's not that much difference between these two lenses. Now, that's good for the Viltrox because the Nikon lens is almost twice as much to buy a new one as far as dollars go. They're pretty much the same size, as you can see here, not much difference at all. Handling wise, this Viltrox lens is very solid. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels solid. It's got a nice smooth action on the focus ring. I like that. I like the small lens hood. Nice and compact, easy to transport in the camera bag. This one, as I said, doesn't have a lens hood, but it's a little bit bigger. Now, for me personally, if I was comparing these two lenses to my favorite lens, which is this one, the Nikon 20mm f1.8 Z mount native Nikon lens, this is a better lens than both of those. It's a little bit wider. Just quality wise, I reckon it's just absolutely phenomenal. I've never had a lens as good as this one. So that's a very high bar that lens sets. Now, you know, these are not too bad. I'm going to show you the samples. I think as far as cost, usability and all the other things, this Viltrox lens actually comes out very, very closely to this one. So, you know, if you've got a lot of money to spend, you'd probably go for the genuine Nikon brand. But if you haven't and you're looking for a good budget lens, I reckon this is not a bad choice. There's a few little things. I found it just a touch harder to focus, but that may have something to do with my eyesight. I'm wearing glasses. I can't see properly on the back of the screen. So, you know, that comes with that caveat. And any of these lenses can be difficult to focus. Focusing at night time to focus on stars is something you need to spend a fair bit of time on. But anyway, look, what I think the best thing I can do is show you some of these images now on the screen, and let's go from there. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, our first image, which looks pretty good. These are all, at this stage, these are all single shot exposures. So you can see the Aurora here, looks pretty good, doesn't it? This is the old Keystone mine, as it's called. So this is shot on the Viltrox wide open at f1.8. And right next to it, we have the image shot on the Nikon wide open at f1.8. Just slightly different framing because they were, well, 6 inches apart. But apart from that, there's not much difference at all. I've done exactly the same editing on both of these images. Now I want to point you up to the corners. So let's go back to the Viltrox in the top right hand corner. Now this is wide open at f1.8. You can clearly see these angel wing coma here. This is what coma looks like, folks. You're not getting pinpoint stars in the corners. Let's go further into the middle. Stars aren't too bad there. Up into the other corner, you can see same thing. We've got pretty bad coma performance here. It's actually not as bad as some other lenses that I've seen. But anyway, let's look at the Nikon equivalent. So this is the Nikon lens, wide open at f1.8, up in the corner. Let's have a look and see what this one looks like. And you can see there's also a bit of coma here, but it's not as bad. Definitely better performance. Little angel wings, as they call them, into the middle of the lens. Pretty good, no problem there. Up into the left-hand corner, and you can see, once again, there is a bit, but this is definitely acceptable. So the corner performance, wide open at f1.8, definitely goes to the Nikon. It's much better. But if you look at the images overall, let's go back to the Viltrox. I'll just put it up a full screen for you to have a look at. It looks pretty good. It seems to have decent sharpness across the field. Remember, this is shot at 24mm. It's a single exposure, so some of that foreground's a little bit out of focus because it's too close. But other than that, that's not bad. All right, let's move on to f2.2, which was the next aperture. So I shot this. This is the Nikon one here. You can see that I shot this 2.2, 10-second shutter speeds, ISO 3200. So that's the settings on this image. Look at this Aurora. Doesn't it look fantastic? Wasn't even there to capture Aurora, and it just popped up in the background. All right, let's go back up to that corner again. So this is the Nikon lens. So once again, that's pretty good performance. I mean, there is some little bit of aberration there, but gee, it's not too bad. Let's go over to the other corner. And again, that's pretty much acceptable as far as I'm concerned when you're looking at these wide angle lenses. In the middle, yeah, it's nice and sharp. That's good. Okay. All right. So that was the Nikon, remember? So I'm going to have a look at the Viltrox now, which is this one right next to it. So the overall image doesn't look much different. Okay, so it's still got some coma, definitely some there, but it's definitely better than it was at f1.8, which is what you normally expect when you start stopping down the lenses. Let's go over to the other side. Yeah, still there, but better, definitely better. Yeah, that's pretty good. This is f2.2 aperture, remember? So that's just stopping it down to f2.2, and that's pretty good performance. I don't think this lens is quite as sharp across the board as the Nikon. It's hard to tell because I'm not sure I got the focus spot on, but just looking at those two, this is the Nikon, just slightly sharper, I reckon. Anyway, let's move on to the next image, and this one is shot at f2.8 aperture. So this one's f2.8, 13-second shutter speed, 24mm focal length at ISO 3200. Once again, I'm going to go up to, this is the Viltrox, I'm going to go up to that right-hand top corner, and let's have a look at that. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. This is stopped down to f2.8, and that looks pretty good. Pretty good. Let's go to the other side. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad at all. This is at f2.8, remember? So yeah, that's good. I reckon I nailed the focus a bit better on this shot. Gee. I'm not going to blame the lens for that, because that would be just my inability to nail focus. But overall, let's go full screen. That's a really good shot. Really good. I'd be happy with that. That's f2.8. Okay. All right. That's fantastic. Let's look at the Nikon while we're there. So this is the exact same shot on the Nikon lens. So let's just go up to that top corner. Yeah. So this is not much different, but I think it's a little bit better, but marginal. Just a little bit sharper, I reckon, in that top corner. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good performance. So remember, this is the Nikon 24mm f1.8. And that's in the middle. Not bad. So what I might do here is just put these two together up for you so you can get an idea side by side. Okay, so we've got the Nikon lens on the left-hand side, the Viltrox lens on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to zoom up into those corners again. Not that much difference. I think the Nikon lens is a little bit cleaner, but they're pretty close. Let's go to the other side. Gee, they're close, aren't they? Not seeing too much difference there. In the middle. Very close. Very close. I think the Nikon lens, which is this one, on the left-hand side, is just that little bit sharper and cleaner. But you're not noticing too much difference, really. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's at f2.8. So just moving along, here's another angle. This is the Viltrox lens, f2.8, 13-second shutter speed, ISO 3200. Yeah, looks pretty good to me. I'd be pretty happy with that. Very nice. Beautiful Aurora. Have a look at that. There's even a few beams in there. Let's look at the Nikon while we're on the subject. Exactly the same image. Beautiful beams. I think you can just see a little bit more definition in those beams on the Nikon lens. That leads me to think that the Nikon lens is just that little bit sharper across the board, which is probably the conclusion I would have expected, but they're not that far apart on those settings. Okay, now you might remember when we were out there in the field, I did some stacked exposures with some light painted foregrounds. Now I'm just going to show you the Viltrox lens here because I didn't go to all the trouble of editing both because the Viltrox is what you're interested in here. And so I shot this initially at f2.8 for the background sky. I shot 10 background images, stacked them for noise reduction in sequator. Then I took about 5 or 6 or so shots of the foreground here at f5.6 at ISO 500. And just zooming in close, let's have a look at the detail. Gee, that looks good. Have a look at that. This is the foreground. Nice, isn't it? Nice and sharp. This is the Viltrox lens. That's nice. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you here, I did not refocus. This is not refocused onto the foreground. All I did was stop down the aperture. Because when you stop down the aperture, by default, the lens depth of field is increasing. So many times you don't have to refocus. Let's just go in on the stars. So, yeah, they're pretty good. Nice and sharp. Now, one thing I can tell you, when you stack images, you will tend to clean up the corners of the images. As you can see, this is pretty good. But it already was pretty good because I shot this at f2.8, so it didn't have a whole lot of coma or anything like that to worry about. And by the way, I haven't done a whole lot of editing on that sky. It's pretty stock standard. I just took the whole thing over to Photoshop to actually put together into the final image. But gee, just looking at that, I think anybody would be happy with that image. So that's taken with the Viltrox 24mm f1.8 lens on a Nikon Z6 camera. Okay, so you'll remember I got the tracker out and took some images. So I want to show you this one. This is the Viltrox at f2.8. This is shot at ISO 800, 120 seconds, so it's 2-minute exposures. Now, I must admit, I had a few issues with wind. It was very windy, and therefore vibration could have been an issue. But let's have a look at it. This is in the top corner on the tracker. Remember, this is just a single exposure. It's pretty much the same result I got from the other images so far at this point. It's pretty good across the top there. Let's go down to the bottom corner. Yeah, that's good. Not bad. And let's go to the other corner. Yep, all 4 corners on this image are the same. And that's something I've noticed on some lenses where you'll get different focus or shift or some aberration shift across the field of view. This one doesn't do that, so that's a good thing. Let's have a look at the Nikon. I think I struggled a bit with the wind with this Nikon lens, so let's just see anyway. So this is exactly the same settings with the Nikon. And you can see there, firstly, I think I might have not got focus right, but it could also be because it vibrated a bit because the wind was gusting pretty bad at this point. So this test may not be conclusive, but I was more concerned about the Viltrox test than this one anyway. Yeah, so that looks, it's pretty much the same right across the frame as well. Now I did shoot at f1.8 as well, but I was, I'll show you it. This is the Viltrox at f1.8, 90 second shutter speed, ISO 800. It's a bit overexposed there, but let's have a look at the corners. Yeah, lots of coma. So to me, that's unacceptable. I wouldn't shoot this lens wide open at f1.8. This is on a tracker, remember? Still coma there. Let's get in the bottom corner. Yep. So across the field, in every corner of this lens, at f1.8, there's a fair bit of aberration. You can see it there. In the middle, much better. It's a fair bit of chromatic aberration around these stars, but we can get rid of that. I haven't done any editing on this image or any of these images. They're just straight out of the camera. So once again, I'd definitely be stopping this lens down to f2.8 to shoot on a tracker, but that's not a problem. I do it all the time with all my lenses pretty much, so that would work quite well. Okay, now just before we finish, at the end of the night, I went and shot a windmill, which is just up the road from where the gold mine is. And the Milky Way core was starting to rise up in the background, so I shot this with the Viltrox lens. Now, all this is 10 images stacked for noise reduction and for clean image. No lighting on the foreground there at all. This is just the windmill spinning away. This is shot at f2.8, 10-second shutter speeds, ISO 6400 at 24mm. So I'll give you a full screen view of that just so you can see what it looks like. And that's not a bad image. Not bad at all. I think, let's have a look at the corners of this one. And the other corner. Yeah, pretty much the same corner performance as the single image. Yeah, can't see much down there. So not too bad. Now, the other thing I did, I shot 8 images and made into a pano. You can see them down here. Here's our panorama. And I actually quite like this image because I put one light on a light stand doing low level lighting throughout the whole capture of this image. And let's go full screen and have a look at that. That is a very nice image. In fact, this looks better than the stacked image. This is an 8-shot panorama, camera in vertical orientation. Nice bit of air glow in the sky there. Milky Way core. This is the Viltrox 24mm f1.8 lens, stopped down to f2.8. 13-second shutter speeds at ISO 6400. That's pretty good performance. So you can see fairly clearly there that when you really push this Viltrox lens, you will see some imperfections, especially in the corners at wide open apertures. But once you stop it down to about f2.8, there's not a whole lot of difference between this one and the Nikon equivalent. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, if I buy an f1.8 lens, why would I bother stopping it down to f2.8? Well, let me put it this way. A lot of people say to me, why do I need an f1.8 lens at all? And one of the reasons you would buy a lens like this is simply because it is such a wide open aperture that you can still stop it down to f2.8 and still have a very fast aperture lens, and then you're starting to get some pretty good corner performance. Now, obviously, comparing it to something like this Nikon 20mm f1.8, it's not, this is going to blow it away, but this lens is nearly 3 times more expensive than the Viltrox lens. So for those of you on a budget, I would recommend this lens for Nightscape photography use. This is the only Viltrox lens that I've tried. I know they make a 20mm, I know they make a 50mm, and maybe others. So I think they're a line of lenses that if you're on a budget looking for something with pretty good performance at wide open apertures, I don't think you could go too far wrong with a Viltrox 24mm f1.8 for Nikon Z mount. All right, so there we go. Hope you've got something out of that. Look forward to reading your comments down below. For those of you who may have tried the Viltrox range of lenses, I'd be happy to just get your opinion and see what you think about it. Other than that, happy for you to subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. I do Nightscape photography. That's pretty much all I do. So if you want to see pictures of the stars, the Milky Way, and light painting out there under the stars, well, you're at the right place. All right, I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Have a fantastic week.